A very large lizard causes a great deal of inconvenience while trying to lay some eggs in Madison Square Garden in Godzilla, one of 4 new movies we're going to be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert, and we'll also have a report from the Cannes Film Festival. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times, and my colleague Gene Siskel had surgery a couple of weeks ago, and I'm very happy to report he's well on the road to recovery. Gene has seen all of the movies on today's program, and I think we're going to be hearing from him all during the show. Are you there, Gene?
Yes, I am, Roger. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune, and I hope that our producers have selected a really good photo of me that our audience will be forced to stare at for the next few minutes. Okay. I wonder if such a photo exists.
You're looking great, Gene.
Oh, thanks.
You look fabulous. Okay.
You're an excellent critic.
Okay, now on to Godzilla, which plays like they took apart 6 other monster movies, threw out the good parts, and then tried to reassemble what was left in the dark. Anyone who has seen many giant creature movies will recognize all the obligatory stops along the way, like the ominous early warnings, the destruction of famous landmarks, and the monster who makes a comeback after you think it's dead. The monster is never dead the first time around in these movies. I didn't even mind the formula. I just wish it had been done better. Consider this scene, for example. Matthew Broderick plays a scientist called in to determine what kind of beast caused a disaster in Panama. Watch the way the movie goes for a cheap shot as the camera pulls back.
I'm a biologist. I take radioactive samples and I study them.
That's great. Here's your sample. Study it.
What sample?
You're standing in it.
I don't see it.
Yeah, it's a giant footprint, all right, but obviously the scientist would have known that he was in Panama to study footprints. Anyway, before long, Godzilla has arrived not at its usual destination of Tokyo, but in King Kong's old stomping grounds, New York. Another problem I had was with the monster's size. He's as tall as a 30-story building in some shots, and yet here they're afraid he might escape into the 20-foot-high tunnel system. Of course, logical questions like that are sort of beside the point. If Godzilla worked as a monster movie, I'd be happy, but it doesn't. There's not a single scary shot in the whole movie, and the monster itself lacks the majesty and mystery of the earlier movie Godzillas, even though they were in schlock films. Somebody told me it seemed less like a threat than like a pathetic, frightened animal, and you know, that's right.
Roger, I agree with you. You mentioned and complained that the film had all the standard elements of big monster movies. Mm-hmm. It's missing one: terror.
Exactly.
I was never afraid of Godzilla.
That's absolutely right, Gene. In fact, most of the time, I thought I'm just looking at special effects. I never had the illusion that there was a monster there at all. I just thought this is animation or this is some kind of a model.
You just see a big, wrinkly creature, you know, stumbling across the landscape. There's no terror in this film, and that's stunning. I mean, that would be the last thing I would expect from this picture. Let me tell you another problem they have. Frequently, they use dialogue instead of action. Mm-hmm. For example, we're told that the monster, once he starts ripping through Manhattan, there's a report that there's looting in the Disney and Warner Brothers stores on 57th Street.
Yeah.
Show us that stuff.
Absolutely.
Don't have somebody say that in dialogue. Show it. It's obvious. It's a natural opportunity for humor with Godzilla playing with all the plush toys. It's not done.
What did you think about Mayor Ebert and his sidekick, Gene?
I thought that seemed petty.
Yeah, I did too.
It does seem petty, Roger. I mean, I was used as a villain in another picture called The Ref, and Siskel was the name of the villain. And, you know, it's such a distinctive name, an odd name, that, you know, audiences are thinking, well, all right, when's Ebert going to show up? Now, you shouldn't be thinking about that during a picture.
Yeah, the only good thing about Mayor Ebert and his sidekick was that at least Godzilla didn't step on us.
Well, but Roger, I fully expected that to happen. And I think the audience is waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, maybe they should have included that.
Again,
bring him on stage, at least squish him, right?
Exactly. There are missing scenes.
Okay, next movie. And
What are you doing in my closet? That's right. No, what the hell are you doing in my closet?
Yeah, that's the old reliable scene where a perfectly innocent person does a completely insane thing and is mistaken by somebody who was scared out of her wits to begin with. That's the best friend and roommate in the closet. Now, why didn't she turn on the lights when she came into the apartment where she lives? Why did she make creaky noises? Why did she hide in the closet when she knows that her best friend has been terrified of slashers for the last 12 months. I'll tell you why. Because a movie like I Still Know What You Did Last Summer is so bankrupt of ideas that it can't even come up with interesting cliches. The movie stars Jennifer Love Hewitt as a girl who is still being stalked because of a traffic accident that happened not last summer, but actually the summer before last. A mad slasher dressed up as the Gorton's fisherman in a slicker and rain hat is chopping up everyone around her. Hewitt and a roommate, played by the pop singer Brandy, went a trip to the Bahamas with their boyfriends, played by Matthew Settle and Mekhi Phifer.
If I'd known for just 1 second, you'd be back to bother me. Oh, now go.
Everyone's a damn singer.
Just turn around now, 'cause you're not welcome anymore. Don't know the lyrics. Hold on.
It's him.
Sure enough, the mad slasher in the raincoat has followed them there. Now, how did they win the trip to the Bahamas? On a radio station contest where they said Rio was the capital of Brazil. Well, that's the wrong answer. The answer is Brasilia, and the contest is a phony. But frankly, I was surprised these characters even knew Brazil was a country. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer is a deadening series of setups and slashings, setups and slashings, setups and slashings, and for its viewers, it's a waste of 90 precious minutes that they can never get back. Just think, Gene, that's 3 hours between the two of us,
right.
And if you multiply that by thousands of people who will see this movie, it adds up to months, years, even centuries lost forever to the human race.
Yes, how if we'd all pulled together, we could have solved some very big problems. We could have gone to a disaster site and, you know, put sandbags by
We could have
a raging dam.
That's right. We could have stopped flooding. We could have tutored kids who want to learn how to read. Maybe have a used clothing drive or something. Think of the hours of volunteer labor that this movie has taken out of the human time pool. It's shocking.
I'm going to go home and just cry.
I think I'm going to start crying right now.
Okay, next film.
Let's see. You're moldable. It's a little ticklish.
Absent-minded Professor Robin Williams and his sidekick Weebo are delighted there by his latest invention, green goo that's flying rubber, or flubber. And maybe flubber will save Williams' bankrupt university, not to mention his engagement in this retread of the early 60s comedies that starred Fred MacMurray. What I kept thinking was, forget the flubber, though, and patent Weebo, which is a levitating personal digital assistant with a seductive voice by Jodie Benson.
Professor, it's gone.
It is.
Professor, I think you gave it a little too much free will.
Marcia Gay Harden plays his long-suffering fiancé, who is fed up even when he claims flubber will save the university.
This is the reason I didn't make it last night. It's flubber. Flubber. It's a metastable compound, Sarah. In layman's terms, if you apply a small amount of energy, it liberates an enormous quantity of energy.
Flubber has a lot of applications, including the ability to turn every basketball player into Air Jordan.
That's pretty good.
Sorry, but flubber just never took off for me. Instead of finding really funny applications for the amazing substance, the movie just thinks up goofy ways for it to bounce around the room and make people bounce around the room. And then there's an unfunny subplot involving a couple of hired goons who creep around like clones from Home Alone. No surprise there, since this movie was written by John Hughes of Home Alone. What's intriguing in the movie is the way little Weebo is in love with the professor and considers the real woman to be her rival, but that's never really explored.
And probably ought to be explored in another movie in terms of...
Son of Weebo.
Well, no, I mean a personal computer getting involved with the owner of it, or something like that.
That'd be fun.
There could be a story
sure.
there. We give these away for free, don't we? That's
yes,
really nice.
Yeah.
But this movie bored me to death.
I know.
First of all, to make the basketball game so boring at the payoff, I mean, I have seen, not that long ago, the original Flubber.
The dog playing basketball was better. Remember the movie where the dog
I'm just
played
saying,
basketball?
I'm talking about the actual Flubber movie, and they did the same stuff basically. Robin Williams seems tired in this picture. He doesn't seem to be getting any joy out of it. The film seemed to be also shot dark, and I don't think it was the way it was projected when we saw it. It just felt down and depressing, and then has things bouncing. It's not enough for me to recommend.
American dollars, all cash, of course. Half now, half upon completion. $70 million.
Bruce Willis is hired by the Russian Mafia in The Jackal, one of 6 new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. The Jackal stars Bruce Willis as a legendary professional killer who was hired by the Russian Mafia to assassinate the head of the FBI. He's a skilled technician who works alone, and up against him is the deputy FBI chief, played by Sidney Poitier. How to find the Jackal? Poitier believes a convicted IRA terrorist, played by Richard Gere, might know where to look for him.
I can identify him by his face, given the opportunity, more importantly by his methods.
Did you work with him? With him?
No. No way.
You have a problem with this man?
It's between him and me.
The Jackal hires a weapons maker to construct a remote-controlled mount for the high-powered automatic rifle he plans to use in his assassination plot.
Hey! I give up.
Well, I guess the automatic sighting works.
Yeah. Thought I was about to sprawl.
Well, Lamont, that's speed tested now.
Speed test.
So, run.
The Irishman bursts into an FBI meeting with a sudden insight. Maybe the head of the bureau isn't the Jackal's real target.
It always bothered me. Why did he keep coming? When he knew he could protect the director, especially once I got involved. But he didn't abort. Why? Didn't come together until I remembered what he said to Valentina. Tell Declan he can't protect his women.
In the showdown, the Jackal disguises himself as a cop to get close to a public ceremony in Washington.
Looking for a dark brown minivan and anything else that's out of its place.
The little minivan we found, this red one here. I checked it out about 15 minutes ago. It's got a local parking permit, DC tags.
The Jackal is inspired by the screenplay of Fred Zinnemann's classic film Day of the Jackal, released in 1972. It's instructive to note the difference in style between these two periods of filmmaking. The earlier film was a character study, wonderfully well acted by Edward Fox. This one is more of an international thriller, complete with elaborate chase scenes. Both films tread dangerously by using real-life targets. The earlier film was based on an actual attempt on the life of Charles de Gaulle. This new Jackal considers a potential victim who is obviously supposed to be Hillary Clinton, and that made my heart sink. I don't see how actors like Willis and Gere can complain about paparazzi and tabloid journalism and then appear in a movie where the First Lady is fair game as a murder target. Thumbs down.
Well, Roger, I give it thumbs down for reasons that the target could have been you or me in the picture. I thought the picture really stunk, and I mean it that way. First of all, the picture it's being compared with made my top 10 list that year.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. We knew de Gaulle didn't die that way, and yet we were suspenseful. That was a great picture. This is totally empty. I mean, there's no character in the Bruce Willis character here. Nothing. You can't tell me anything about the...
You know, that's right, because Edward Fox really was a person who was doing this, and Willis is more like just going through the motions.
And again, 25 years ago, we learned details of how passports are faked, documents are faked, how you operate a gun here. None of that. It's all the details are gone, and that's 25 years ago. Here, they were more excited at showing the gun, the big gun, and the big holes it can blow things up with than writing a screenplay. I think it's a very bad film.
I think you're right. I was disappointed in the film. I was disappointed in the
Our
paper.
next film is a candidate for the year's worst. Any year's worst. It's called Little Indian Big City, and it's a badly dubbed French film, badly dubbed into English, about that old story, the wild child brought into civilization. The boy is found in the Amazon jungle after his father has gone there to get a divorce from his estranged wife. Typical of the film's stupidity, the boy's Indian name, Mimi Siku, translates to, get this, cat pee.
This in Homoview? Big arrow piercing sky, like our necklace, Grandfather Muluku?
Of course, yeah. The Eiffel Tower, yeah. It's in my hometown.
And it big. You take me Eiffel Tower?
Well, yeah, sure. We'll go someday.
Once in Paris, cute little cat pee climbs the Eiffel Tower. The film would like to be a heart-tugging father and son story, but look at how lamely this scene plays.
Okay, and to visit a monument, you buy a ticket with money. And you can't kill birds, and you have to dress properly. It's hard to understand, but you have got to learn. Do you promise to learn?
Have I communicated to you just how junky this film is? I think it was the lousy dubbing job that offended me the most about Little Indian Big City. If the ad campaign for this picture is big enough, a lot of parents and their kids are going to be hoodwinked into paying to see a completely unprofessional movie. It is not professionally made.
No, it's not.
Should not be
It's a
released.
very, 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 very bad movie.
Yeah.
And when you say the dubbing offended you the most, I don't know, Gene. There's a lot of competition. There were a lot of other things that
Well, that's
offended me, too.
controllable, Roger. See, that's why it bothers me. In other words, all right, there are lots of
I
lousy...
know why they dubbed it, because I don't think anybody who likes this film is going to be able to read. I think it's basically for illiterates and people under the age of 5.
Okay.
And you know, all these French movies that have been remade recently, they're going to remake this movie in a Hollywood version, and it's going to star Tim Allen. And I just have one statement to the people who are going to write the new movie, and that is, this is a real case of being assigned to turn a sow's ear into a silk purse. I hope they can do it.
Well, you know, we always say that they shouldn't remake classics. They should remake bad films. You found one.
I'd like to give you a very intimate demonstration of our new prototype, PERSEC unit, Personal Security Unit, with user-selectable pain dispensing modes. Choose which of your senses to attack, sight, sound, or touch.
That's a scene from Mr. Payback, the first interactive movie. Actually, it's a 20-minute short that is having its premiere this week in 22 cities nationwide. The gimmick? Audiences in specially equipped theaters get to vote a dozen times through electronic handsets for the directions the story will take.
The buttheads are out there. Who will Mr. Payback meet next?
Mr. Payback is thus somewhere between a movie and a video game, offering up the adventures of an avenging bionic man played by Billy Warlock, who gives the audience such choices as, which way would you like him to pay back a jerk who parks in a handicap space? Move it means Mr. Payback will dismantle the car. Choosing good excuse means he'll deflate the guy's tires. And if you push the make it legal button, well, that has Mr. Payback shoot the jerk with a dart that paralyzes him, thus legitimately rendering him handicapped. Hey, isn't that entertaining? Votes are tabulated electronically, and Laserdisc machines up in the projection booth make instantaneous edits as the story unfolds.
Spoiler, huh? Buckle up! Have a nice day!
Mr. Payback is dreadful, full of humiliations involving electric shocks to the groin, the beginning of a rape scene, and a school principal being dressed up in a leather harness and spanked with a paddle. Foul language is wall to wall.
There are still too many jerks and scumbags taking advantage of their fellow man and getting away with it.
Naturally, each one of the kids I talked with after the show in suburban Chicago enjoyed it immensely. And did you like Forrest Gump more or less than this? Or is it a close call?
Yeah, it's a close call.
Do you like the part where the principal was hit, where she was dressed up in a leather harness and hit with a paddle?
Yeah, I like that part. That was funny.
More fun than an average movie or less fun?
Really more fun than an average movie.
They're charging $5 to sit through 2 showings of Mr. Payback so that the audience can choose an alternative storyline, different humiliations. Instead of maybe the paddling of the teacher, the second time through another villain, you could see a bad corporate executive get forced to eat a dog dish full of monkey brains. I would have paid twice as much to see Mr. Payback only once.
You know, Gene, I'm sitting there in the theater next to a little, sweet little grade school girl. And I'm wondering what she's thinking as she's voting. The sadistic headmistress has the hero handcuffed to the ceiling, and the audience is voting, should he be spanked with a paddle, beaten with a rod, or should they go after his genitals with an electric cattle prod? And she's voting for one of these 3 choices, and I'm sitting there appalled. The movie is moronic. It is bathroom humor. It's an insult to the intelligence, but what I want to do right here is say, I think the verdict isn't in yet on the idea of interactivity. Now, this is not a movie. A movie acts on you. You don't want to interact with it. You want it to act on you. So interactive movies are not movies.
No, they're not.
But the idea of interactivity probably has some very interesting places that it can go, none of which have been discovered by Mr. Payback, but the technology, I think, should not be thrown out along with the dishwater, if that's a
dishwater is a compliment to the artistic mentality of the people.
Yes, it is. A high compliment, yes.
Yeah. I felt that my favorite venue in the entertainment world, the movie theater, had been soiled. Yeah. Because, frankly, it felt a little unclean being in there. When we come back...
Our next movie is Jury Duty, starring Pauly Shore, an actor who, for me, is the cinematic equivalent of long fingernails drawn very slowly and quite loudly over a gigantic blackboard. To watch him for a short time is unpleasant. To watch him for a long time is insupportable. In Jury Duty, he plays an unemployed layabout who obviously got all of his brains and most of hers from his mother.
I'll find something, Ma. You just don't worry.
Oh, look no further, Mr. District Attorney.
What's this? A jury duty notice?
My son, the lawyer.
Eventually, she and Tommy's father throw him out, and suddenly he's delighted to be called to jury duty because it means he'll be sequestered, which for him means fed and sheltered.
Welcome to the El Presidente Suite, your new home away from home.
Wow. Every day isn't a holiday. Every day's an orgasm.
Tommy doesn't make an ideal juror, as a fellow member of the panel, Tia Carrera, soon discovers.
So what do you think?
About what? You're sleeping or you're drooling?
And here's an example of the movie's general humor level with Abe Vigoda as the judge.
What in God's name are you doing here?
Your Honor, I don't think it's fair that you guys get to have your own little powwow over here where we can't listen. We have to hear too for information.
You're a juror. Get back in that box.
Now, Gene, on a recent show, you accused me of being too soft on the actors in the movies that I don't like.
I think it's more than that. I think you're too soft on naming just names in general, whether actors or directors or producers.
Well, I'm sorry if I was too soft on David Caruso, but in particular, you said I was too easy on Chris Farley and Tommy Boy. Well, let me tell you something. I'd rather attend an entire Chris Farley Dusk to Dawn film festival than sit through any 5 minutes of jury duty. I felt like I'd been sequestered. This movie stinks.
Well, let's get back in agreement here.
Okay.
It does stink, and he is annoying. And it's not annoying like Jim Carrey, where there's a comic strategy to it. He's just aggravating. It's a disaster. Coming up next...
1800 tomorrow night. I want you on that train.
Thank you.
6 o'clock, Linda. If you're not there, I have to leave without you.
Melanie Griffith is a secretary who becomes a spy alongside Michael Douglas in Shining Through, one of the new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert. And we'll also take a look at the career of Sean Young, the actress whose controversial new film is Love Crimes. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yeah, I think they've been picking on Sean Young too much, and we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune, and our first film is called Shining Through, an old-fashioned World War II melodrama that is a better love story than a fighting the Nazis espionage story. The best part of the film is the opening verbal byplay between would-be employee Melanie Griffith and her tough, mysterious boss-to-be, Michael Douglas.
You stand up and turn around, please.
Why should I do that?
Because you want the job, and I asked you to. It's a test I like to give.
Well, I'll take it sitting down.
Griffith, of course, is hired, and in a 1940s version of Working Girl, she becomes a great employee, figuring out that her boss is a spy for America.
How do you know all these things?
I might be a better spy than you are.
Where Shining Through goes wrong is when Griffith, the daughter of a Jewish father, decides she wants to spy on the Nazis too. Some corny dialogue here.
I want you to taste my strudel, the way my grandmother taught me to make it, and my apple compote. She taught me to cook German style, the way my grandfather likes it. And I could cook for 50 if I had to. 5 courses, the way they do it in Berlin. And on nights when they didn't have people over, I could bring tea and strudel up to the Drescher's study and put a little schnapps in the tea so that Horst and Hedda would get tired and could retire early, and I could be left alone in the study to clean up. This is not about you and me, damn it. I want to do something important with my life.
Eventually, she does go to Germany, and in scene after scene that seems false, she worms her way into the Nazi high command, working as a nanny. that try my strudel line is really kind of silly. The problem is, it doesn't work anymore, I don't think, to make a melodrama about World War II in general and the Nazis in particular. We know too much about that era. A movie without some real bite on those subjects can really come across as trivial. Now, I did like the chemistry between Michael Douglas and Melanie Griffith, so I guess what I felt at the end of Shining Through is a wish to see these two actors cast one more time together, but in a much more substantial movie.
You know, I kept trying to tell myself it was only a movie and I should try to enjoy it and suspend my disbelief a little bit. But how many, just as a general question, Gene, I don't know if you have an answer for this or not, how many times do you think an English-speaking spy could go into Nazi Germany and come out again by the ploy of pulling out a card saying, wounded war veteran, can't speak, and pointing at a blood-stained bandage around his throat? How many times do you think that would work before somebody would catch you?
Do you know what I'm talking about, where this period of time, you can't play it this light?
Yeah, it's not dinner parties and serving the soup at the wrong temperature and being fired as the cook and then being hired as a nanny. You know, last week you were complaining that nobody would have hired that nanny in The Hand That Rocks the Cradle without a better interview. How much better chance do you think that a complete stranger would have of becoming the nanny to a top Nazi officer who lets her walk around the house while he has all the rocket plans in the basement? Pretty slim chance, I think.
Yeah, it's not very likely.
Disappointments of the year, I'm sad to say. Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman, two of our finest movie talents coming off of big films from about 4.5 years ago, Reds and Tootsie, now directed by Elaine May, who has made some very good pictures. A New Leaf, for example. Now, how can people as bright as these three come up with this mess called Ishtar? For one thing, not for a second did I believe Hoffman and Beatty as would-be Simon and Garfunkel singing so badly that they leave the audience aghast as they try to make it in show business.
I need you to call my own and never do wrong, to hold in mind your little hand. I'll know too soon that all is so grand. Please hold my hand.
The two men refuse to believe they have no musical talent. Well, we believe it, as they compose ridiculous song after song.
I got it.
If you admit that you can play the accordion, no one will hire you in a rock and roll band.
Man, when you're on, you're on.
Hello, baby.
That's not funny, it's just dull. Desperate for a job anywhere, they take a gig in Morocco. They become involved in Middle East politics and wind up wandering the desert, still singing their song badly.
My lips are on fire with my desire for you. Good song. So let me drink some water. Let me drink some wine. If you're not my daughter, will you still be mine?
They're laughing, and we're not, and that's late in the film, and we haven't been laughing, and when we see them laughing, it's offensive. A little of their singing goes a long way. Now, what I haven't shown you, and it really doesn't work at all, is the film's action-filled story of political intrigue, as Beatty and Hoffman become pawns in a confrontation between Libya and the United States over this mythical nation called Ishtar. Now, obviously, some kind of political commentary is intended. Politicians are corrupt, at least these guys are trying to sing, so hooray for the artists, down with the politicians. But that message is strange. There's so many blind camel jokes and so many stupid hijinks with Arab characters that the only satisfying moments in this elaborate film are provided by Charles Grodin as a CIA agent trying to stop Beatty and Hoffman from upsetting the balance of power in the Middle East. Well, I wish he had stopped them from singing and from wandering the desert, because Ishtar is a crushing bore.
It sure is. I think we have a real good candidate for our worst 10 movies of the year right here. And the sad thing about this film is a comedy should have a lightness of touch. It should have a lightness of being. It should seem like the people in the movie are having fun, as if they want the audience to have fun. And this movie seems regimented right down into the ground. The characters are not funny. Their songs are pathetic. I mean, I know that they were trying to make them sound bad, but they succeeded all too well in making them sound so bad that they aren't even funny, whether they're bad or not. When they get to the Middle East, the camels and the sand and the subplots
This movie, at that point, it just seems to just totally evaporate into terminal desperation. There is just nothing here to grab onto. I sat in the theater, and with all the best will in the world, I was trying to smile, and I was just looking at this disaster on the screen and saying, how in the world was this movie, why did anybody think that this was funny? Again, it has to be laid at the script. I mean, you have two of the most charismatic actors we have around.
Playing against charisma, by the way.
Yes, playing dullards.
Yes.
And you know, Warren Beatty had trouble playing a dullard in another film, The Fortune, directed oddly enough by Elaine May's old partner, Mike Nichols, and it didn't work there, so maybe there's a lesson to be learned there. Dustin Hoffman seems unchanged, like he wants to break through and just take over the movie, isn't given a chance. Instead, he does have to wander the desert. I don't want to see those guys crawling around in the sand. That isn't funny. Hope and Crosby can do it funnier, and did it funnier.
The big shootout when they're shooting at the helicopter.
Oh, who cares about that?
Come on, you know.
You don't even want to see Stallone do that, let alone two great actors.
You know what I would have liked? Would have been probably hilarious? Documentary on the making of this movie.
Or either that or just Charles Grodin alone.
Well, then we would have had another movie, which
would have been shorter.
Would have been shorter and better. That's John Goodman, and that is the electrifying moment everybody remembers from the legend of Babe Ruth, the day he allegedly called his shot and hit a home run during the 1932 World Series. The Babe is a movie that wants to tell the truth behind the legend, but I don't think it does, and I'm not sure I'd want to know the truth if it did want to tell it. This is a sad movie about a sad man, and although the ads make it look like a comedy, the experience of seeing it is more like living with an alcoholic relative. Sure, the Babe was able to drink all night and hit home runs all day, at least for a while, but his first wife, played here by Trini Alvarado, finally had enough and left with their adopted child. She couldn't stand the infidelity, the drunkenness, and the immaturity.
4 women at one time? What are you? Some kind of animal?
And his second wife, a Ziegfeld Follies girl, played by Kelly McGillis, has to stand up for him when the Yankees cast him into the baseball wilderness.
That stadium down the street is the house that Ruth built, Buster. When the Black Sox threw the series, baseball almost went under, but that overgrown child kept the people coming. He saved baseball.
Even the movie's high points lead to low points later on. This is the famous moment when the Babe makes a promise to a sick kid.
Babe's gonna sock you a home run in the game tomorrow. Would that make you feel better, Johnny? Two?
Now, that's an inspiring scene, all right, but it comes back to haunt us in the fictionalized ending when the Babe hits 3 home runs in his last game, and then that kid, that very same kid, who is now a grown man, jumps out of the stands and tells the Babe he saved his life years earlier, and here's the autographed ball back that you gave me on what you thought was my deathbed. Endings like that went out in the 40s. Maybe they went out in the 30s. John Goodman is perfectly cast in the movie's title role, and you can see here how good he would have been in a better screenplay, but The Babe is a thoroughly routine and mediocre project that uses all the standard Hollywood psychological cliches, but fails to get under the skin of this American legend. Babe Ruth may have hit a lot of home runs, but here, he's only a pathetic bore.
Actually, I thought it was a very bad movie too. But I would judge it simply on the so-called high points. You attack the low points, which I think are interesting if you're going to write them well.
Yeah.
So I admire that attempt. But on the high points, this is the most cornball kind of movie in the way it was made. And I'm going to have to fault the director Arthur Hiller by name. His pattern is high point, cut to the next scene. High point, cut to the next scene. I mean, the way that the little kids thing is handled, that's really amateurish, Roger. It's not thrilling. It's not informed about baseball. In the last few years, we've had so many smart baseball movies, from Bull Durham to the raucous Major League to the picture that this film would like to be, the natural, which showing the grandeur of the great gesture, the great home run, and the way that Barry Levinson filmed that. I mean, this picture looks like maybe a 10-year-old movie of the week. It's that bad.
Yeah, I was really disappointed too, and you know, they did a masterpiece of cutting the trailer.
I didn't see it.
Walking into this movie,
I didn't see it.
I was expecting a great film. Coming up next,